Okay, so we're diving into some cricket today. A pretty interesting match, actually.
Oh, yeah.
Royal Challengers Bengaluru hosting the Delhi Capitals at their home ground,
Right.
which you'd think would give them the advantage, but
You would think.
yeah, Delhi Capitals took the win, and we've got this report here breaking down all the post-match reactions and, all the analysis.
Oh, cool.
And I think what we really want to do today is look beyond just the scoreline and see what those, deciding factors.
Right.
What were the moments that kind of swung the match?
Yeah, absolutely.
What did the players have to say about it?
Yeah, the insights.
The insights, yeah. And
Yeah.
the strategy calls that really shape the outcome.
I think those are always the most interesting bits.
Yeah.
More so than just the, who scored the most runs.
The what happened. Yeah.
Exactly. It's the why.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The why is always more fascinating.
Absolutely.
So let's start with RCB's batting because their captain, Rajat Patidar, did not mince words.
Oh.
He basically said it was just not acceptable.
Wow.
Which is kind of harsh. But when you look at the scorecard, you can see why.
Yeah.
There was 61 for 1 in the fourth over.
Okay, so a really strong start.
Blistering start, yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
And then
what happened?
it all went downhill.
Oh, no.
So what do you make of that, as someone who watches a lot of cricket?
Well, I mean, to have a start like that,
Yeah.
you'd expect them to capitalize on that momentum,
Right?
and to kind of just keep going.
Yeah.
But the report here says that they lost 3 wickets for just 30 runs.
Right.
So they went from 61 for 1 to 91 for 4.
Yeah.
And that is a momentum killer for you watching at home.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That just, puts the pressure on.
Yeah, the remaining batters have to play defensively and
Right, and it just changes the whole
well,
energy.
the whole game. Yeah. And Patidar himself said they had good intent at the beginning.
Right, so they were playing well.
Yeah, they were playing to win.
Yeah.
But then he also admitted that they just didn't capitalize.
Yeah.
And it makes you wonder, was it the pressure from Delhi Capitals bowling?
Right.
Or did they just misread the pitch?
Yeah, did the conditions change?
Yeah, because he did say that they thought it was going to be a nice batting track.
Yeah. Okay, so they went in thinking.
Yeah, thinking it was going to be
Easy runs.
Easy runs.
Yeah.
Yeah, but maybe it wasn't.
Maybe it wasn't so easy.
Maybe the pitch had something to say about that.
Right, and maybe it did change as the game went on.
Yeah.
Because, you see that sometimes where a pitch will start out kind of, good for batting.
Right.
And then as the game progresses, it starts to offer more assistance to the bowlers.
Right. Yeah, and you see those wickets falling in quick succession.
Right, exactly. It's a sign.
Something's not right.
Yeah, either the batters aren't adapting or the bowlers are just
right.
On fire.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, later in the innings, Tim David came in.
Oh, yeah, Tim did.
He, kind of tried to save the day,
Bit of a hero.
Bit of a hero, yeah. And Patidar even called it a really amazing innings.
Okay.
Which suggests that, it did give them a boost.
Yeah.
But then Patidar also said that it was just too late in the day.
Right. Too little, too late.
Too little, too late. Yeah. So what does that tell you about the whole, batting performance?
I think it shows that while, a late surge can be exciting and, it can make a difference.
Yeah.
You really need those consistent contributions throughout the whole batting order.
Right.
You can't just rely on one person to come in and save the day at the end.
Yeah.
You need everyone to kind of
chip in,
yeah, and be adaptable.
Right. Adapt to the conditions as they're changing.
Exactly.
Right.
Yep.
So let's look at Delhi Capitals now.
Okay.
And their bowling strategy in particular, because the report really highlights how effective their spinners were.
Okay.
Kuldeep Yadav.
Yeah.
And Vipraj Nigam.
Okay.
What did you think of their performance? I mean, spin bowling, the wickets offering any kind of turn.
Yeah.
It can be so effective.
Yeah.
It can restrict the scoring rate.
Yeah.
It can get you wickets.
Yeah.
It just puts pressure on the batting side. So the fact that these two guys were singled out means they must really
done something,
right?
Yeah. And it wasn't just the individual bowlers, though. It sounds like Axar Patel, their captain, he had a really smart plan.
Oh, okay.
He actually said that he felt like RCB's batters preferred facing pace.
Okay.
So what he did was he held back his faster bowlers.
Oh, interesting.
And he brought on the spinners during the power play.
Oh, wow.
Because he felt like the ball was turning and bouncing a bit more.
Yeah, he was playing mind games a little bit.
Yeah.
With the opposition.
I know what you like.
Yeah.
But I'm going
to do this instead.
Yeah. And it worked.
That's so smart.
Yeah. It was really smart captaincy.
Yeah.
It wasn't just reacting to what was happening. Right. It was anticipating.
Yeah.
And That's the sign of a good captain,
Absolutely.
being proactive.
Yeah, and that's something I've noticed for you watching.
Yeah.
That often separates the good captains from the great captains.
Yeah.
Is that ability to anticipate
Yeah.
and kind of be a step ahead.
Be a step ahead, yeah.
Yeah.
And Patel seemed pretty happy with how his team's doing overall.
Right.
He mentioned that their confidence is really high, especially after 4 wins in a row.
Okay. Yeah.
And that kind of momentum,
It's huge.
it's huge, yeah.
Once you get on a roll like that,
Yeah,
it just, it builds belief
Yeah.
within the team.
yeah, it changes everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
So now let's talk about the player of the match.
Okay.
KL Rahul, who scored 93 runs and was not out.
Wow. That's impressive.
Yeah. And especially when you're chasing a target,
Yeah.
that's a lot of pressure.
It is. It
Yeah.
is. And to do it without getting out, that
Yeah.
just shows incredible composure
Yeah.
and skill. He just anchored the innings
Yeah.
and saw his team through to victory.
What I thought was really interesting, though, is that he was the wicketkeeper for the whole of RCB's innings.
Right.
So he spent 20 overs behind the stumps watching every ball.
Yeah.
And he actually said that that gave him a really good understanding of how the wicket was playing.
Oh, okay.
He said that the ball sat in the wicket,
Okay.
but that it was one-paced.
Now, for someone who doesn't watch cricket, what does that actually mean?
Yeah, so when a batter says the ball sat in the wicket,
Right.
it basically means that the ball wasn't coming onto the bat very quickly after it bounced.
Okay.
And one-paced means there wasn't much variation in the speed.
Oh,
So for Rahul as a batter, this meant he had more time to react.
right.
He knew that the ball wasn't going to hurry onto him
Okay.
or jump up unexpectedly.
Right.
So he could play his shots with more control.
So that time behind the stumps
Yeah.
really gave him an advantage
Absolutely.
because he knew what to expect.
Yeah, he had inside information
Yeah.
and he used it brilliantly. He said he knew his scoring pockets based on the pitch and the dimensions of the ground.
Okay, so he had a mental map.
Yeah, where to hit it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that level of awareness is just...
That's incredible.
It's nice.
To be able to process all of that information and
Yeah.
have that much awareness of the game,
Yeah.
that's a sign of a really experienced player.
Yeah, and it's his wicket keeping wasn't just a separate task.
Right.
It was informing his batting.
Yeah.
So it was all connected.
Absolutely.
He also has a long history with this particular stadium, the M Chinnaswamy Stadium.
Okay.
He played a lot there in his younger years.
Okay.
So he feels like he knows it better than anyone else.
I mean, that must be such an advantage.
Yeah, knowing the nuances of the pitch,
Yeah.
the atmosphere.
Yeah, knowing where the boundaries are.
Yeah, where to hit it.
Yeah.
And he said that even when he's practicing,
Yeah.
he's always trying to adapt to different wickets.
Oh, wow.
So he's not just practicing on the same pitch over and over.
He's challenging himself.
Yeah. He's what if the pitch is doing this?
Right.
What if it's doing that?
Yeah, that's a sign of a true professional.
Yeah.
Someone who's always trying to improve,
Yeah.
adapt.
Yeah, always thinking ahead.
Yeah.
And even Axar Patel, DC's captain, had a lot of praise for Rahul.
Okay.
He called his innings mature and highlighted how well he performs under pressure.
All right.
And he even compared him to how he played in the Champions Trophy.
Oh, wow. So high praise.
High praise. Yeah. So you look at all the different perspectives. You've got Patidar, who's obviously disappointed with how his team batted.
Yeah.
Axar Patel, who's really happy with how his team played.
Yeah.
And then KL Rahul, who had this amazing performance, but it was all informed by his wicket keeping.
Right.
It's just so interesting to see how everyone experiences the game differently.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the things that makes cricket so fascinating.
Yeah.
It's not just about the physical skills. It's about the mental game as well.
Yeah.
And the strategy
Yeah.
and the way that all of those things come together
Yeah.
to create the final result.
It's like everyone has their own lens
Exactly.
that they're seeing the game through.
Yeah.
The captain's thinking about the big picture.
Right.
The bowlers are thinking about their deliveries. The
Yeah.
batters are thinking about how to score runs.
Yeah.
And then you've got KL Rahul, who's kind of got this dual perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
So to wrap it all up, it seems like the main reason RCB lost was that they just couldn't keep up the momentum after that amazing start.
Right.
And maybe they misjudged the pitch a little bit.
Yeah.
And that prevented them from setting a really challenging total.
Right.
But on the other hand, Delhi Capitals had this really clever bowling strategy.
Yeah.
They used their spinners really effectively.
Yeah.
And then KL Rahul just played a blinder of an innings.
Yeah.
And that was all thanks to his time behind the stumps.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a really comprehensive performance from Delhi.
Yeah, and it wasn't just about the final score.
Right.
It was about all those layers.
Yeah.
The strategy, the execution, the individual brilliance.
Yeah, the awareness.
The awareness. Yeah, so I guess the takeaway here for anyone listening is that there's always more to the story than meets the eye.
Absolutely.
You know, whether you're watching cricket or you're doing something else entirely.
Right.
Like, think about how different people might be viewing the same situation from different angles.
Yeah.
And how that can give you a much deeper understanding.
Yeah, a much richer understanding.
Yeah, of what's really going on.
Exactly.
So yeah, food for thought.
Absolutely.
Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive.
Yeah, this was great.
We'll catch you next time.
See you later.